Okay, it is Monday, and I am here with the one and only Alyssa Farah Griffin. Hello,
Brian.
Hello, Alyssa. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. All right, let's jump into this Trump-Elon feud because this is driving me crazy. We weren't able to talk about it on Friday because we had recorded that show earlier, but today we got to dive into it, and all weekend it was all anybody was talking about until more news. But let's talk about this, what you said today, because you called this from the beginning. I got to give you credit. We all knew it would never last, but did you think it'd be this dramatic?
I knew it'd be dramatic. I don't think I thought it was going to go from 0 to, I'm not even going to say what he tweeted about Donald Trump with regard to FBI files, but in like 10 minutes flat. Like that,
Right.
That was such an escalation. I was like, oh, like I saw some of the tweets were being sent to me and I went on to make sure they were real because it just felt wild.
Right.
Now, I did predict this because the way I said it, I think at the time was they both have main character energy. If you think you're the star of the show, it's only going to last a little bit with someone else who thinks they're the star. So a lot of people, when they saw that presser where it was like Elon in the Oval next to the Resolute desk, like he's the real president and, whatever. And I was like, at the end of the day, Donald Trump was the one who was elected. Elon wasn't. He spent a lot of money to get Donald Trump elected, and it was going to come to a falling out. But what's fascinating about this is just how mean it got. Like the fact that he was actually saying he should be impeached and replaced by J.D. Vance.
Right.
And Trump was surprisingly, I'm curious if you agree with this, he was kind of like more tepid in his response.
Very restrained.
Yeah, I was like, you can tell he's a bit afraid of Elon Musk. And eventually I think went with the knockout blow, which was, okay, I'll take away your government contracts.
Right.
And that's where, so Elon Musk has about $48 billion in government contracts over 10 years. So, I mean, that's something like a third of his net worth that could destroy SpaceX, Neuralink, some of these, things that some of the big entities that really have made him a lot of money. So I think that's when he's like, oh, wow, Trump is crazy like a fox. I should probably stop tweeting for a bit.
Now the basis for all of this is that Elon opposes the bill. It seems to be the on the surface.
Yes, but here's what I don't agree with.
Please.
I do not think that Elon Musk woke up and found Jesus and fiscal conservatism. I'm sorry. Where has he been for 30 years? We have been voting for deficit spending since Bill Clinton was in office. Right, left, center, Republican, Democrat. Donald Trump, to his credit, he ran on a lot of things. He did not run on, I'm going to balance the budget and bring down the deficit and get us a surplus. He simply didn't. So I think it's a little bit rich. I think what it's really about is Republicans are cutting these electric vehicle tax credits. They're wiping them out in this bill.
Right.
So those are huge for people who buy Teslas. And Elon is claiming, I don't even need those. Tesla is so successful. I don't need people to get the EV credits. But I'm sorry, no one in my family could afford a Tesla without the EV credits. That was literally like the reason to buy an EV. It's good for the environment, but it also could be cheaper than buying a gas guzzler because of these tax credits. I think that's what it's entirely about. I actually, like, in a sane White House laissez-faire liaison would go to Trump and be like, maybe you should cave on these EV credits and like solve this behind closed doors, not in like a pissing match between Truth Social and Twitter. But here we are.
I mean, so at one point it looked like these bridges were entirely burnt.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump.
Yeah.
Is he able to forgive the things that Elon was saying? It seems like maybe he'd be open to it.
It's going to be a while, but it reminded me of Steve Bannon and Trump, where, remember the old SNL skits? Steve Bannon was the one at the Resolute desk. He was the shadow president, and then the falling out happened. And I remember I was working for Pence, and Trump basically announcing to staff, it's open season on Steve Bannon. He's persona non grata. If you've got anything bad on him, leak it to the press. Like, he's done. And then about 6-8 months later, he had made his way back into the fold. So that could definitely happen. The X factor here is Steve Bannon I don't agree with him on most things. He is actually a very smart, savvy operator who the things he cares about, he really believes in. I don't know. Elon Musk is clearly a genius in some regards, but in others, I get the sense that he's a volatile person. I don't get the sense that he's somebody who's going to play a long game and be super strategic or sort of like re-ingratiate himself to Trump.
Right.
That said, there's absolutely a world, as much as people are like, loyalty's everything to Trump, you're dead if you're not loyal to him, there's a world in which in 6 months they're going to be back talking to each
because
other.
Elon has value to Trump too,
Yes.
the money and everything else. But now Elon deleted a lot of the nasty things he said. He's in the last 24 hours been praising what's happening from the federal government in California.
And he's refollowed some senior White House advisors that he had unfollowed before.
So maybe there is a reconciliation happening.
I think that honestly the tweet about his government contracts made him realize like Trump is willing to go there. And think about it further. Like I don't want to, put this into the universe, but Trump could launch a DOJ investigation into his companies. He could sic the SEC on him. Like the power of being the president is more powerful than anything money can buy. Like you could be the wealthiest man in the world, but that doesn't mean you control the entire federal government.
As we've seen by all the billionaires that have been cozying up.
Exactly. So I think there's someone who got to Elon, his board of directors, his shareholders that are like, you need to stop. And also him realizing this is only going to hurt him. I will say this, Trump will win this fight between the two of them. But as the point I made on the show, Elon kind of called him a lame duck. And the thing that Donald Trump is most afraid of in this second term is being seen as a lame duck president. And if for some reason this big, beautiful bill, as he calls it, doesn't pass, he will be seen as a lame duck. People are going to start eyeing who's the future of the party. Is it J.D. Vance? Is it whoever?
Donald Trump Jr. Maybe.
Yeah. God help us. Who is it? And as they start looking to the midterms is when I think it really becomes pronounced that like he is in kind of the twilight of his presidency and all eyes are on who the future of the party is. That's, I think, something that Trump's very fearful of because that's when he won't have the same power and influence over Republican members of Congress when they're like looking to who do I need to cozy up to next? Whose side do I need to stay on? And Elon is right. He may be around much longer than Trump.
Now, one thing Elon was talking about on his tweets or X's, or whatever you want to call it, was the idea that there's now time for a new party because he wasn't, but you just roll your eyes at it entirely.
I find a lot of things that Elon Musk says rich. So if you followed Elon Musk about 3 years ago, his Twitter feed was like, Slava Ukraini, stand with the people of Ukraine, like support electric vehicles. He was just a different person. And I'm not convinced in the course of just 2 years, you completely flip on being an independent-minded, maybe right of center, but people could never quite peg in person to like, now he's saying, I want a party that represents 80% of Americans. Sure, me too. But then he spends his time calling people like ableist slurs on Twitter all day.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's speaking to the 80% of America. Like, I think
that's fair.
Yeah. If there's going to be some billionaire who emerges to save the day, my money's on like Jamie Dimon or something. Somebody who actually talks like most people and kind of seems to speak to most people's anxieties.
Well, now the last thing on this is Whoopi had a theory today. And as is the great thing about Whoopi is you never can see it coming.
Yeah.
She believed that this is all pro wrestling, basically. Like she thinks this is a put on. You were very quick to say, no, you don't. The funny thing for me is I've heard this from a lot of places, but I've heard it from people that are in my life that are Trump supporters. Yep. I think because they can't bear to have the breakup and they just have to believe that something smarter is going on behind the scenes.
My very pro-Trump person close to me, my sister, had the same thing. She's like, no, this is all strategic. It's a plan. Like
it's
this
to sell more Teslas to liberals.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what it was. I was like, how? That's not going to work. Like that. You think that's all it would take to get liberals to like Elon Musk again? With due respect to Whoopi, because I love a Whoopi unexpected take.
Me too.
I very often agree with them. This one I just disagree on. I think that there's a lot of people want to assign more strategy to things that the Trump White House does, definitely to things Elon does, than are there. And if you're Donald Trump, like you're not going to potentially risk your entire legislative agenda to help Elon sell more cars. You just can't. Like, so just to put into perspective, the big beautiful bill, it extends his existing tax cuts. It has a bunch of energy policy that he's banking on to basically jumpstart the economy. He thinks that is going to be kind of help offset the tariffs. It has a number of like his top priorities in it. Everything he ran on is basically in this bill. A lot more immigration enforcement. If this doesn't pass, he basically looks like a guy who did a lot of executive orders but couldn't get a massive legislative hurdle through. And this is weedsy, but it'll remind people of his first term when he ran over and over on repealing Obamacare and couldn't get that across the finish line. Like this is a must-do for him. And if his tax cuts expire, like the projections for the economy are already bad, that would make them significantly worse.
Did Elon give Republicans cover to vote against this?
Yeah. So what I was hearing, I talked to a couple of Republican House members as this was happening. We were like texting. So I was like, I need to know what the Hill thinks. And what was said to me by one was basically, if you're a senator who isn't up this cycle, like you're not up until say 2028, you have carte blanche to vote against Trump's bill because Trump can't hurt you.
Right.
He's going to be out of office when you're running for re-election. If you're up in 2026 and you can't really afford rage tweets against you from Trump, you're probably going to have to vote for this. The House, it's a little more like, let's see where it pans out because they're all up every 2 years.
Right.
And I think you're going to see some of these guys, like some of the Freedom Caucus guys who might end up siding with Elon over Trump under the guise of fiscal conservatism, because a lot of those people genuinely believe that. And so they're probably going to be like, oh, Elon actually, he does make absolutely great points about this bill. So I could see it's a big hurdle to get it across the finish line.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot because we've been praising your prognostication abilities. Does a version of this bill get passed?
Yes, but it will look very different than this one, is my guess.
All right. Let's talk about the other big story that we talked about on the show today. The tensions are really high in Los Angeles right now after President Trump sent in the National Guard to face off with ICE protesters. This kind of, to use the Anchorman meme, escalated quickly. You said today that you didn't support using the National Guard on American streets unless it's for severe circumstances. I think they said 1965 was the last time this happened during the Civil Rights Movement.
Yeah.
What do you make about how this is playing out?
My sister's in LA, and I really have been every now and then on weekends I will try to do a tune out the news and social media, and then I figure you producers will reach out if something's breaking and I really need to know. And I really did a detox this weekend, but my sister lives in LA and she started texting me and calling me about it. And my gut is this: the protests, from what I saw, did start peacefully. They're also not, from what I can gather, and I want to be careful because it's hard to get exact reporting on this. ABC's got cameras on the ground. They've got good coverage of it. They look very large, but what I'm hearing is they're nothing projection-wise in terms of comparison to George Floyd in 2020 or anywhere near the Rodney King riots back in the 90s. And Trump, I think, saw an in. I think there were some examples of some violence, some damaging.
Yeah,
of
there
vehicles.
are photos and video that is very concerning.
But a lot of this comes a little bit later. But that is true. You see cars on fire. You see people throwing projectiles at the law enforcement and at the National Guard. But the way that this should work is not to jump to sending in the National Guard. It should be the president on the phone with the governor saying, what capabilities do you need? What don't you have so that you can secure the streets and so that you can make this with law enforcement who are trained in anti-riot, whatever, to handle this? But it sounds like those lines of communications were very blurred with him and Newsom, and they sent the National Guard in. And this bothers me because when I worked at DOD, I worked with so many members of the military, guardsmen and others. And the last thing they ever want to do is be thrown into a political powder keg because they don't talk about their politics in the service. When you're in a foxhole, you're not a Republican or a Democrat. You are just an American there doing your job. And it puts them in this position that is so difficult and uncomfortable. And what happens too is I think it takes one bad actor in the protests that decide to escalate it, and it becomes sort of that group think of then it just feels okay that everybody's going to go wild. Because some of the imagery we've seen is terrible. It's horrible. Police should never have things thrown at them. They shouldn't be shouted at. They shouldn't have their things thrown back. Same with the National Guardsmen. And it's so counterproductive to the cause. I was talking to somebody that we know and love dearly who's like, this is not good for immigrants in this country. It's not. The visuals are not. Donald Trump got the visual he wants. He wants somebody waving a Mexican flag on a burnt, beat down car with smoke behind them. That plays to everyone's worst fear and prejudice about immigrants in this country. So I would encourage people with platforms, talk about what you can actually do that helps those communities, because there are things. One of the biggest things is if you can contribute to volunteer time to help legal services, lawyers who are helping people get their day in court and representing people pro bono. That's the biggest thing. You have to go through the legal process. Violent protest is never going to be the answer.
Right. I agree. All right. Also over the weekend, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man mistakenly deported to El Salvador in March, was returned to the United States to face federal criminal charges. What did you make of this, the timing of it, the fact that it happened at all after they were very adamant that he would never return to this country?
Well, first and foremost, our courts held. Donald Trump dragged his feet. He ignored the federal court ruling for a while, but I was very bullish that he was ultimately going to comply with this. I think that as I said earlier, I don't assign some jujitsu fancy level of thinking to Donald Trump in anything he does, but I also think it's safe to say that he knows optics, he knows things that he can do, and he has a pretty good gauge after 10 years of how liberals are going to react. And my criticism from the outset with the Abrego Garcia case is the cause, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican who cares about due process, is not the man of Abrego Garcia. It is about due process. Shout from the rooftops that even if you committed heinous crimes, you are still in America entitled to due process in the court. That's what it's about. But when you make the individual a martyr in a cause in and of themselves, and then you find out there might be some really serious, there are serious charges against him. At minimum, we knew early on that he had had multiple restraining orders for abusing his wife and endangering his children, which the wife then did draw back. But those existed. We knew we were not dealing with like a shining citizen. I think people would be wise to take a beat and remember, what is the cause I'm advocating for, rather than a reactionary make this person a hero. Because if the unsealed indictment is true, if the courts find that he's guilty of what they found, he should get a very serious sentence, and then he should be deported from the United States.
Right, but none of that will change the fact that he should have been given due process in the first place.
100%. And that's the thing, is the whole argument should be about due process. Due process matters even more when you are somebody who's been accused of a crime, not when you're just like some nice, upstanding citizen. Everyone is entitled to it.
Right. So from your perspective, what should happen then is if he's given fair due process, found guilty, then the people who were demanding that he be returned should then say,
yeah,
okay, justice was done. But
correct. Yeah. But that's the thing. It's funny. We're actually reverting to how it should have happened in the first place, which is he should have been given his day in court, able to see the charges against him, able to have representation and defend himself. And my understanding is he will, if convicted, serve his time in the States before he's sent to his home country.
All right. Well, we'll be watching that.
But yeah, the blogger point being is, it's like, I think that people would be wise to like pause, get the facts, not be emotional, which it's hard to be when it's things that you care about. And remember, what is the thing I am trying to protect and defend? And in that case, it is the right to due process, whether you're a citizen or non-citizen. Make it about that, not the personalities who Trump sprinkles into it, because I think he probably chose this person for a reason.
All right, let's move on to some fun. Andy Cohen was here last week, and you asked him if Summerhouse would change next season. He didn't love the question in the moment. I could tell.
He said, "I'm not the EP," and I'm like, "Okay, but
you're Andy Cohen.
You are literally
in charge of it.
The puppet master of all of Bravo."
But the next day it was announced there would be some notable cast changes.
We get results here at the View.
We really do. Tell me your thoughts on this.
Well, I was actually really sad about all of the
no.
answers, but there's major shakeup. So Paige DeSorbo, as I predicted, is leaving, and she's host of the Giggly Squad, her podcast. Not as good as Behind the Table, but pretty good.
That's right.
She is moving on. I think that was kind of expected. She's become very successful. But then Lexi Wood is also leaving, who is a newcomer this season, who helped kind of bring some drama to the show. And then Gabby, who's been on for a number of seasons, is also leaving. So it leaves the show in this interesting place of like some of like an OG like Paige leaving, and then some of these newcomers. So they're going to have to do kind of a big reshuffling of it. But I kind of love that. I think bring in some like new sloppy people. My thing with this, with like a show like that that's built kind of around like partying, once people get into the early mid 30s, your ability to really like send it just like decreases. Bring in some like 25 to 28-year-olds and let's see what they have to offer.
Although I will say I have some friends in their late 40s that can
I say that, but I was just telling you about a dinner party I had with a bunch of my neighbors where they drank like 2 bottles of wine per person.
Yeah.
Not me, but
no, not you, and I don't recommend it. I'm just saying I've got some friends that wake up on the floor of their garage and don't know what happened.
You're never too old.
Hey, Kevin. All right. There's casting news on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Tell us about it.
Yes. Fashion designer Rachel Zoe is joining, which people are very excited about. She has been on reality TV before, but also just like iconic, great style, beautiful. People love her. I was intrigued by the fact that she was on Beverly Hills because that is a tough cast to blend in with.
Right.
You've got most of the women on the show have been on for many years at this point. Although the rumor is Erica Jane's getting demoted to friend of show. We're not sure if that's true. But it'll be curious to see how she fits in with the women. I do think she's friends with Kyle Richards, who's kind of like the queen of the show. I had originally thought she was going to be on Real Housewives of Orange County, which I sort of felt like she would have blended better with that cast. So I'm curious to see. I love Real Housewives of Beverly Hills has for a decade been my favorite franchise, and I'm struggling a little bit with it. It felt so negative this last season, so I'm hoping she can inject into it like friendship and like something that makes it more fun and you actually believe that these women under it all might love each other.
All right. Thank you for joining me today, Alyssa. Tomorrow I'll be back with Sarah Haynes, and we'll see you then.